What? All I want is, all I want is a little, all I need is a little respect. Hey, crib community, come on in the room. When you come in the room, hit share. We gonna start off right. What? Dr. Timothy, I see you. Looking
Hey.
good. Love the background, by the way.
Thank you. I love the music.
Hey, thank me. Oh, I had to play that, particularly for our topic today. Respect me.
Hello.
That's what I had to do. I had to do it.
I'm a houser from back in the day, so yes. When I heard that, I'm like, this is my people. What?
Yes. Let me tell you, I went into, oh my gosh, we're live now. But I went into this. Now I'm dating myself. Went into a record store and I was like, do you have old school house music? And they put me over in the like electronic. I said, no.
Deeper love, respect. Come on now. Yes. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a whole old school house music playlist.
We need to talk. We need to jam when we can. I'm telling you.
That sounds good. Oh, by the way, hi, crib community.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Good night. To see everybody.
I am so excited. I feel like we have crossed paths in meetings, and you actually helped me find my way out of Boise after a meeting.
Oh wow! I don't remember. Okay, cool.
It was a long time. I could not get out of the.
Boise will trap you. Don't be trapped in Boise, you know.
And I was like, how do you get out of here? And you were so helpful. So.
Oh wow.
But
great.
Hopefully we will see each other again in person one day.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to that. All right. Okay. So we have a lot of house heads in the room as well. People are
what? Okay. House is everything. House is revolution. I want to talk about how using music for change from black community. That's house. That's who we are.
Thank you. Amen. I'm gonna dive in and get started.
Definitely.
Ready?
Yeah.
I'm so excited. Okay. Calm down. Be professional.
Okay. Excitement is professionalism. We have to be real, right? So I love it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, crib community. Welcome to 30 at 8:30.
Nice.
A space and place where every Wednesday night we just hold the space for 30 minutes to talk about issues that are most pressing and most important to some of our most vulnerable. And tonight, y'all, I promise to deliver. We are opening our first episode of season 3 with Dr. Roberta Timothy. Can we make some noise, crib community, for Dr. Roberta Timothy in the house, pun intended. Yes. So I want to start by reading her bio, so you are positioning yourselves. If you don't already know, you need to know. Roberta Timothy is an assistant professor and the first Black health lead at the Dalla School of Public Health at the University of Toronto. Dr. Timothy's research interests intersect anti-colonial and anti-oppression and community-based health promotions, policy, and practice. Specifically, Dr. Timothy takes a transnational, intersectional human rights approach to examining social determinants of health impacting African, Black, and Indigenous communities. Through a social determinants of health and anti-oppression psychotherapy lens, Dr. Timothy's current research examines criminalization and social determinants of health in African, Black, and Indigenous communities, and mobilizing critical intersectionality and anti-oppression psychotherapy in community mental health. Come on, y'all. Come on, you ain't ready. Okay.
Who's that?
One of Dr. Timothy's projects is developing a Master of Public Health program in Black health. I might have to sign up and go back to school. Anyway, I digress. Without further ado, crib community, please give Dr. Timothy a warm and righteous welcome like only we can. Yes.
Thank you so much.
There are
Uh,
coming through the line.
thank you, Village. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
I love heart too. I love heart.
Oh my gosh,
beautiful.
I'm so excited. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first question.
Yes.
Basic question. I mean, just straight no chaser. What drew you to this work? What drew you to this work?
Well, what drew me to this work is African emancipation. You know, fighting and looking for freedom. I grew up in a feminist activist home, boycotting, buying black, protesting was all a part of what we did on a daily basis, you know, from marching in terms of black and, you know, young youth being shot down by the police and in the 90s when I was, you know, a teenager, to marching for black women's rights, to marching for queer rights, and really, you know, looking at the injustices that happen in our communities. So it's like, I tell people this, I was breastfed on resistance.
Ooh.
It's what I know.
Breastfed on resistance. Yes.
And I'm the youngest of many from a working class family. So, you know, it's like we had to do this work to fight for our rights. And it's not rights as in the notion of human rights that we think about, but really rights as in emancipation for Black folks. We are not emancipated. We are fighting colonial wars. We're living through colonial wars, and we have to continue to fight. So it's hope for me. It's about our ancestors. You know, it's, you know, my you see me through my mom who's passed, and my grandmother, my great grandmother, and we have to do the work for generations to come and generations that exist now.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. African emancipation, y'all, you heard it here first. Truth telling tonight here at 38:30. Come on with it. I had goosebumps, and we are just at question one. I'm sweating.
Me too. I'm like, hey, we're sweating for resistance.
You just said a word. You just said a word, and I'm okay. All right. Next question. So you often state that you take a transnational, intersectional, human rights approach to social determinants of health affecting African, Caribbean, and Black and Indigenous communities. What does that approach entail, and why is it important to take this approach?
It's a critical approach because we come from the continent of Africa. We were taken, you know, and brought to different places, incarcerated in the Caribbean, in Latin America, in the US, in Canada. And if we don't unify and connect those roots together and have a transnational perspective in terms of our emancipation and resistance, we actually are not going anywhere. We are living, you know, we're living through a state of war, and the white supremacy that we are resisting wants us not to be transnationally connected. So, you are my sister. When I see you, my sister, we might have some things, you know, sisters have fights, we have communication issues, we got really good things, but we have to communicate. So when I take a transnational, intersectional one, we're looking at different classes, different gender identity, sexual orientation, age, disability, refugee status, language, you know, the colonial languages that in my family, French, English, Spanish, you know, we have to break that. So transnationally, we need to look at ourselves as African peoples from a Black feminist Pan-African perspective, and that's how we're going to do that's the only changes that we can really. That's how change is going to be made. Because we have to break these pieces. So don't let me get started.
More hearts, and then so talk that talk is one of the comments. Talk that talk is one of the comments in the chat.
Yeah,
y'all, we are at question 2. Come on in the room. When you come on in the room, hit share, because this is fire. Okay, all right. So, Roberta, in my work, next question.
Yeah,
I've really tried to help people understand how the interplay between social determinants of health and structural inequities have contributed to the disproportionate impact of homicide on Black communities.
Right.
So I'm wondering if you could say a bit more about how this correlation plays out.
Right. So when we're looking at social determinants of health and structural violence, many times people look at social determinants of health and they talk about economics. They talk about economics having, the fact that poverty or housing inequities and food insecurity leads to health issues, main health issues, and also leads to maybe in terms of structural violence, they might have more structural violence in your life. But the real pieces that are missing is the impact of anti-Black racism and college, because that creates poverty. It creates structural violence. It's the foundation
of everything,
right? And people love to talk about. They love to talk about poverty without talking about anti-Black racism. The reason I came as a working class, my mom came here as a domestic worker. It's because she wasn't able to come anyway else because of anti-Black racism and structural violence. So it really is important when we look at social terms of health to critique that kind of traditional white Eurocentric notion that wants to say they're disadvantaged, they're poor, they have bad health, they have bad eating habits, bad habits. Yes, there's some social conditions, but not talk about the structural violence, which means the system that systematically, strategically state-sanctioned violence that creates housing apartheid, food apartheid, criminalization, all of these other pieces from the white supremacist state. So
structural equities are inherently structurally violent. When you deprive somebody from the right to equitable housing, education, food, clothing, shelter, that is a form of violence.
100%. Anti-Black racism is violence. We have to stop saying anti-Black racism without saying violence. It is violence. And the incarceration, it's incarceration. We were incarcerated for 400 years. Over 400 years we've been incarcerated. So we talk criminalization and incarceration. We have to talk about those pieces. Yeah. Yeah. What? I haven't heard that. I wish we were at a part. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. Hello.
And we have 30 minutes? Okay. All right. Fourth question.
I have to come back, and we have to come back another day. That's all.
We would love to have you, and we need to talk further about that. Okay. So when you talked about mass incarceration, I want to piggyback on that. There's a unique overlap between a perpetrator of violence and a victim of violence. In other words, they are often one and the same.
Yeah.
However, the scarcity of research that examines this overlap has contributed to a narrative that solely criminalizes Black people. In your work, you focus on the criminalization and the social determinants of health in Black communities. Can you share a bit more about your work and some of your findings in this area, particularly as it pertains to homicide and gun violence?
Right. So I've worked a lot with, survivors and or victims of crime. And most of the survivors and victims of crime, or many that I've worked with, are from the Black community who also may have been perpetrators of crime. And, the foundation that we're talking about, I talked about, the dungeons in the continent and also, the whole colonial pieces. The incarceration that we've experienced and the criminalization we have experienced as Black folks is 500 years. So it's not after slavery. It is before it. It's actually what created and supported and upholds slavery and upholds our system today. So when we think about, in terms of my research, I've done criminalization and HIV, and the fact that people who are living with chronic health issues in the Black community have been criminalized, right? Have spent time in jail, who are dealing with a chronic illness, again, comes from that foundation of colonial violence or anti-Black violence that continually creates these almost cycles of victim and perpetrator and kind of like, others folks in our community. So when I look at my community and I look at gun violence that happened, I grew up in Scarborough, anybody, working class Scarborough, Galloway, anybody. When I grew up in that community,
hearts are going up.
When I grew up in that community, there was poverty, there was violence in the community, but who put the guns in the community? Because, I can't go across the border and get no guns. So that was strategically done, has been done in many American cities and cities in Brazil and where African people live, to actually create, victimization and perpetrate or kind of a location of the dangerous, bad Black person which it comes from before slavery and during slavery days. I mean, so it's a whole incorporation of criminalization. And the problem is when we internalize those images and those practices and actions, we think that we're criminal and that we can't, the hurt and the pain and the violence we've experienced then leads to the actions of violence. And I've worked in psychotherapy in terms of using anti-oppression and anti-colonial work to try to look at people, how they locate themselves and how do you decolonize speak that notion that is not ours. That is not ours and that's not who we are. But how do we actually work from that place?
The internalized racism is real. It is real. You're touching upon so many gems. And I think also, I really appreciate you constantly uplifting the fact 500 years, and we're still not free. Because
we have to.
What I keep trying to tell folks is there is no post-traumatic stress disorder for Black people. Traumatic, continuous traumatic growth and traumatic stress is what we live. Right? So yeah, even that post-traumatic or that the notion of neoliberal or post-colonial. I mean, you have to be, for a group of people who've been living in 500 years incarcerated, that doesn't exist. And that's why we have to fight for reparations. I'm the third generation or fourth, probably more, but in my family who's fighting for reparations. I'm teaching my kids already because it doesn't matter what people say that this is not going to happen. We have to demand reparations. And that's what human rights is about. Human rights didn't start in 1944 Bretton Woods. It started when we were brought from the dungeons 400 years ago in the West Coast. And I won't even go back to the East African enslavement trade and Arab colonization. That's a whole nother piece we also need to talk about if we have time. I feel another episode in my spirit. I'm just saying, I feel another episode in my spirit. Okay. Now.
Yes.
I've been touching upon this sort of peppered throughout every episode of 3830. Right. But I'm going to ask the question, and probably of every guest directly. One of the challenges that we face as Black researchers, being a part of the communities we serve,
right,
is doing community engaged work within university structures that require us to do the heavy lift and necessary lift of building trust with communities while simultaneously negotiating our way through academic settings that often do not understand the importance and what it takes to engage in culturally responsive approaches to research.
Right.
What is your approach to navigating the complexity of both spaces? And I'll stop there for that question because I recognize that's a chock full of them.
Such an important question, and I think we talk about it in different places and spaces all the time. For me, I'm a community member first. I'm a village member first, and that sometimes for me it's cost me money, it cost me pay, it cost me work. But for me, it's about my integrity. My integrity is always with the community. So when people say, "Are you an academic?" Well, I can work in academia. But I'm a Black community member, number one. So all of my work comes from that. The trust of the community is never a question because I am from it. I live it. I breathe it. I'm it.
Yeah. In service too. In service.
In service too. And there's that's the pressure too, because like when I'm talking about the work that we do, I have to be humble because folks will tell me straightforward. You have to have a crew that will tell you that didn't make no sense. You better make sense. And also, we are going against a system that is anti-Black violence that doesn't want us to be there. So why am I going to come and support a white supremacist system and be like, yay, this is the university when my community is the one that is who's giving me food, who's housing me, giving me love. So it's always about the community. Yeah. The dichotomy is a colonial dichotomy that I never acted. And also, I want to say one more thing, Dr. Sharpe, Tanya. The internalized white supremacy piece within the university system is really important. So, and I say that because class is an issue. I'm a working class person, and I go to university, and there's a small portion of Black professors, and we need to, there's conflict that happens. There's things to support, but we really need to deal with the class issues because there's a lot of folks who come from middle to elite classes, and they have a challenge and a difficulty working with folks like me who will say it like it is.
Tell
You
it
know,
like it is.
tell it as it is. And we really need to break that internalized white supremacy that we think that we need to act a particular way to actually do research and to do resistance.
Ooh, I'm sorry.
That's all I'm saying.
Can you say that? Can you say that? Can you say that last part?
We need to, you know, we really need to act in a particular way that creates resistance, and not to walk around doing internalized white supremacy practices to ourselves as faculty, staff, community members. You know, in the university needs to be dismantled in terms of white supremacy and anti-black. If I don't get my you know, tenureship or whatever, which by the way, I'm only here 2 years because I'm a community member. That's all good, because guess what? I might be selling some mangoes on the street. Buy some for me, but my integrity is everything for the community.
Yeah, it's not for sale. Your integrity is not.
And the research has to be for our community, by our community, that does not create violence in our community.
Yeah, I have to tell you before I even get to the second question. Literally, I felt that in my spirit and my bones, like just a woosah that I feel seen and heard, and you just.
Shame.
Yeah, I don't even know. Anyway, I don't even know. I just thank you for that. Thank you
for asking me the question, and thank you for having me be a part of this conversation. I appreciate it, and I feel like I'm, you know, the village is opening in different ways because I'm getting to share this and with you and your with the Crip crew. Crip crew. Everything is a crew. Remember back in the days, everything was a crew.
Oh right, that's my crew. That's my crew.
So yeah.
Right, so on that same sort of note, how might interdisciplinary approaches to research help overcome these challenges, help address the residue of white supremacy within university structures that prevent us or try to you know, serve as barriers for us doing the work?
Right.
How might working across disciplines help?
I think that interdisciplinary is important, but it's more important your methodology and your theoretical framework that you're using. So for me, I use resistance education. It's a methodology I developed, challenges Eurocentric notions of research, and, you know, creates a Black feminist anti-oppression intersectional approach to every research that I do. Any type of teaching I do, every counseling I do comes from that approach. So the interdisciplinary is important. I'm a political scientist. I have a counseling psychology degree. I have a, you know, international justice, human rights. I have 4 degrees. The reason I have 4 degrees is number one, because I come from a working class background. I'll tell you straightforward, and you need to get something to do something. And I didn't have no money. You have to get, you know, to get something. But also that all of these different interdisciplinary places and spaces, I did very similar things in terms of resisting anti-Black racism, anti-Black violence. And now I think that what interdisciplinary can do when it's good is it creates a larger group of eyes, a group of thoughts, of theories that can be used to create research that's more palpable, that's more acceptable, more supportive of our communities. I think, you know, it's, if we have, you know, social workers, we have public health workers, we have political scientists, but we have to be on the same page that this is a resistance-centered type of research that we're doing. We're doing this to create change, to dismantle systems. I was somewhere the other day and they talked about, you know, knots. Sorry, I'm getting a little carried away now. In my first Instagram, you know, it's the interdisciplinary is critical if it is in sync with an anti-colonial, anti-oppression, Black-focused, resistance-centered place, which means you're going to have conflicts. I keep on saying conflicts because I come from a big family. My mom came with 15 children. Let me tell you something. You have to grab the meat, the chicken, the thing quickly and deal with it, right? So I say that because we will do research and have different ways of doing it, but let's look at different ways. And somebody might tell you, hey, what you're doing is not, maybe it's not as great, or it has a different effect. So how can you learn? Like, I'm thinking, how do I learn from this? How do I grow? Because it's not about me. It's bigger than hip hop. It's bigger than, you know what I'm saying? So it is. Dead Prez reference there. But yeah, so interdisciplinary is important if it is critical, anti-oppression, Black-centered, feminist, anti-misogynist work. You know, so we need to have, our Black queer community has to be involved. Our Black disabled community, or people living with, disabilities. Our elders have to be involved. We have to think about children and youth, the working class, refugee. All of the pieces have to be a part of the puzzle. Is it difficult? Is it hard? For me, it's a beautiful gift. This is our life. This is about our resistance. This is about life and death for our communities.
Yeah. Oh, life and death for our communities. And I also think, wow, so much of what you said, and I also believe that from that perspective, with that framework rooting us in the work, it's also not even necessary for the research, but it's necessary for our survival.
100%.
Just the way that you are making me feel in this moment, in this interaction, is allowing me to go about doing my work, allowing me to stay rooted in who we are. But without it, there's a fundamental detachment, and that's
and you're doing it for me, and you're doing it for me. You are doing it for me to have me here, just be real, and have a conversation with a sister. That's just and a crew.
And the crew.
Yeah, that's how we do resistance work. That's how we do community. It's simple. We've done it for over thousands and thousands of years. And I also want to say, my spiritual practice, I want to bring this in because I've been saying to folks that I need to bring this in. I grew up with believing in ancestors, and I come from 4 generations. Even my grandmother was a practitioner, great grandmother, and my mom was. It wasn't easy based on the colonial impact of different religions, which most of my family have connected to also. But I want to say our spiritual connections, our connection with the ancestors. We have it's been done for us. The roads are open, and we continue to move through.
I'm done. I'm done. Good night. I'm done.
Blessings.
Okay, I'm done. Woo! Crib community. We're just episode 1, season 3. Do you hear me now? By the again, hearts. We've got hearts.
Oh.
All right. Last question. I can't believe we're here. I do not want it to end. But just on that same sort of messaging, the title of this season, season 3 of 3830, is Interdisciplinary Scholarship and Action. And you've touched upon this already, but what is the importance of working across disciplines, and how do you go about doing your work on human rights and social determinants of health and anti-oppression psychotherapy across disciplines? And you've touched upon it. I wonder if you could just send us home, because we home, but just
be home, but we need to get. I get it. I think it's again the same message. That I work. Anybody who wants me to, I shouldn't say anybody, but to speak about this, I choose where I speak and how I speak. I don't just speak anywhere. So when I'm working across disciplines, for me, there's similarities that I'm working with. We're working about reunification of African peoples, healing of African peoples, resistance of African peoples, doing research that matters for our communities, utilizing resources and sharing resources because they're very limited and they create this kind of tokenized or piece of, if you have funds, share it with other folks. I think, interdisciplinary is intersectional, it's pro-Black, it's pro-women, it's all of the amazing things that we have in our community have to be a part of how we practice. And the action is, you can say 100 things, you can say 5,000 conversations, but it's how you move. And the community will watch you and tell you. And to me, it's about the actions. Action. You can write 5,000 articles, you can write 3 books, but what are you doing in terms of your actions, in terms of how we do this resistance work? And for me, I'm humbled to be in this village, and we have lots of work to do, and we continue to resist.
Yeah.
Can you do this? Ashe.
Indeed. Crib community. Come on now. Come on. Let's give our special guest, Dr. Timothy, a round of applause. I am so grateful. It's 30 minutes and I don't want it to end, but I think we have plans, you and I. This is
yes.
Yes.
You can't put me on the show and just I need to do tea. We need to do tea when we can. We have to continue on. I really want to to get to know you more and get to know Crib a little bit more too. Everybody.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Crib community, thank you so much once again for joining us for the first episode of season 3's 30 at 8:30. You heard it here first from Dr. Timothy. As always, from your crib, from my crib to yours. Stay safe and keep well. Good night. Good night. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.